Welcome to Martin Monday's Intentional Intimacy, where love, life, and legacy meet in the moments that matter most. Every week, I will share sacred reflections of my 30-year marriage before Martin's passing, as well as our life now without him. May these reflections help us live with more weight, warmth, and wisdom. Martin was a letter carrier by profession, but a life carrier by purpose. So let's take a moment and let intentional intimacy speak. Welcome to Martin Mondays, episode 51. We are continuing in the Lewis Principle, and today we are talking about the I, which is integrity. So welcome to this segment. And so there are really some people whose words carry weight. Your words carry weight. And so not because they speak loudly, although Martin did have a very big kind of voice. And it's not because they make grand promises, although Martin oftentimes did make grand promises. But it's really because when they say something, you believe them. And that was Martin. Whenever he said something, I believed what he said because he was a man of his word. And so when I think about integrity, I don't really think about what the dictionary says or like a list of character traits. I really think about something quite a little more simple. And for me, I think about the sand. Yes, the sand in the beach. Now, if you know anything about me, you know that I love crabs. Yeah. But you know that I also love the beach, not because I like the water. I could deal without the water. Now, if it's jacuzzi water, 100% there. But beach water is not an interest of mine. I'm interested in the sand. I like to go 10 toes deep and curl in the sand and enjoy that moment of feeling the sand just like all in between my toes. I love sitting in a chair and I love feeling the breeze. I love to feel the warmth of the sun because, I like heat. Feel the warmth of the sun and the curling of my toes. It's like a beautiful place for me to be in the warm sand. It's just something peaceful about it. There's just something productive about it. And quite honestly, God always meets me there and tells me something. And so Martin, he knew that about me. I love the way he studied me. He did Paulology. I love the way he studied me to know what I liked, and he watched and observed. Even when I didn't verbalize what I liked, he would watch and observe what I like and then deliver it for me. And so I remember one day Martin made me a promise. And remember, Martin was a man of his word. And he said, baby, your feet will touch sand every summer. There will not be a summer that goes by in our marriage and our relationship that your feet will not touch sand. It wasn't like a big extravagant promise. It was a sincere promise, and it was a thoughtful promise. And so I said, okay, I love it, babe. It wasn't always a trip around the world or to some island or, whatever. Sometimes it was just, heading down to some of the local beaches here in the New Jersey area. But it truly was Martin's way of simply saying, I know what brings you joy, and I'm going to make sure that it happens for you year after year after year. And guess what, y'all? He did just that. Some summers it was easy. We would just hop in the car and drive, the hour down to Atlantic City. Other summers it would be more challenging trying to find the right time to go. Work would pile up and obligations and schedules were filling up and the kids' obligations. And those days sometimes would disappear before we even realized how quickly summer was passing. And I remember one year, Labor Day weekend was coming up and my feet had not touched the sand yet. and it was bothering Martin. And so I just thought, well, I guess this is the year that it doesn't happen. But Martin, he had been working hard. He was always working hard, y'all. I know he was tired, and I was fine, if my, feet didn't touch the sand. Like he was so faithful to it that it really didn't matter. Like I was going to hold it over his head and dot dot dot. No, it wasn't like that. And so I remember that Labor Day weekend after church that Sunday, Martin. It used to be that one of us would drive to church and then one of us would drive back and we would switch it up. But then Martin got to the point where he's like, no, babe, I'm going to be driving Miss Daisy and I'll drive you to church and drive you after church. And I was like, okay. So I get in the car that Labor Day weekend after church on Sunday, and Martin starts driving to the beach. I'm like, what? Where are we going? What we doing? He was like, we're going for a little trip, girl. I got to make sure your feet touch some sand. And you get like a little funnel cake. And I'm just like, are you serious? We're like riding to the beach, like right here, right now. We don't have like anything. He said, oh, we can get you whatever you need. Like, and I'm just like, talk about spontaneity. Okay, let's go, buddy. And so that's what we did. We drove down to the beach that day. And Martin kept his promise. I had my funnel cake, had some ice cream. We walked on the boardwalk. I curled my toes in the sand. I smiled, because it was just exciting, for me, because he honored his word and he kept his promise. And it reminds me too of this other time where we didn't go to any of the local beaches, but like I said, I love crabs. I love steamed blue crabs. I love, snow crab legs. And so I remember one date night, Martin came up with this creative solution, and he took me to this restaurant that basically served crabs, like all you can eat crabs, but it was basically picnic tables set up on a beach environment on sand. And so they had these picnic tables with, the paper to collect the crabs. And it was, you basically sat on these picnic tables and put your feet in the sand. And I enjoyed that outdoor crab house because there I was, curling my toes, wiggling my toes in the sand, and eating crabs at the same time. That was like double good. And I was like, man, babe. He was just like, I'm glad you like it, honey. I'm glad you like it. I mean, it was like nirvana in some kind of way. But looking back now, I realized that it was never really about the beach, although the beach is nice. It wasn't really about the funnel cake or the crabs or the ice cream. It was ultimately about Martin giving and keeping his word. I never, ever had to wonder what he meant when he said something. I never, ever had to wonder if it would come to pass. Even our boys, they understood that. Like they would ask their dad for something, and if he said yes, it was like high fives and celebrating because they knew it was done. They didn't know when, but they knew their daddy was going to deliver. And because he was reliable, he was dependable. His word wasn't casual. He was a man of integrity. And so my kids, it would be so neat to see them get excited whenever Martin would say something. And eventually, though, Martin got a little more mature in it, and because he realized that they were setting him up for something, and he would say more things like perhaps, or we'll see, just time will tell, just a way to kind of like not always be the yes man. But he did still say yes quite often, and he always promised. He always delivered on his promises. It is kind of funny, though, when the kids later realized that he was kind of delaying them with not giving them the yeses. They realized what he was doing, but they also realized that he continued to protect his word. And that is part of the legacy that he's left for us, because he refused to promise something that he couldn't deliver, because that was his level of integrity. I'll reflect some more on the other side. So as I reflect on the Lewis principle and the I of integrity. I think we often think integrity is all about those big moments, but it's really not. There's a scripture that says how the small foxes will spoil the vine. And so those little small things, they add up. And if something small can spoil it, then something small consistency compounds, Atomic Habits, one of my favorite books. Then if something done repeatedly and consistently, even if it's small, it can have a significant impact. And so think about the moments when someone is watching. Think about the moments when someone's not watching, because integrity is best tested when, nobody's really watching, because we all can put on a good show and show integrity. But in those moments when nobody's watching or nobody's aware, and you have to have integrity, not just with others, but with self, that's a whole nother level right there. And so, but we often think about the moments and the headlines and the big events and all that kind of stuff. But I don't really believe that that's where integrity ultimately lives. I strongly believe that integrity lives in the quiet places and spaces. That ordinary Tuesday morning, in the simple promises, in simply showing up, and doing what you said you were going to do, and following through and keeping your commitment one at a time. And so when someone consistently honors their word, something beautiful begins to happen, I think. That's trust. Trust begins to grow. And eventually, trust becomes safety. And so I never had to worry whether Martin meant what he said. The confidence in which he said it, his little swag, I could always believe and rely on what he said. It came from years of watching his words and his actions match. There was alignment between what he said and what he did. That kind of consistency, baby, it changes a relationship. It changes a family. It shapes generations. It strengthens marriages. It creates peace and safety. I've often thought about how easy it is to make promises. And the harder work is remembering that every promise becomes part of someone else's sense of security. That's important to realize. And perhaps maybe that's why Martin became ever more careful with his words over time. Because he understood that integrity isn't measured by how many promises we make, but it's really measured by the faithfulness with which we keep them. This week, I want you to think about one commitment that you've already made. Nothing new. Think about something you've already committed to and you've already promised. It might be something small. It could be a phone call, a visit, an afternoon together, a dinner, a lunch. It could even be something that you may have even forgotten about, but I want you to think about it this week. And I want you to honor it. In honor and in memory of Mr. Lewis, in honor and in memory of Martin, and in honor and celebration of you, honor it and keep it. Not because it's convenient, because having integrity isn't necessarily about our convenience, but because somebody may be resting and dependent on the confidence and the consistency of your word. So that's your assignment this week. Thanks so much for spending these moments with me, remembering Martin and honoring Lewis Williams, the Lewis principle of integrity. Their lives remind me that integrity is rarely loud, rarely. Integrity ultimately and usually is found in those quiet, consistent moments of ordinary faithfulness. So a life of integrity is one that is kept one promise at a time. And those promises become the places and spaces where love feels safe. Have a great week. I'll see you next week on Martin Mondays.
Martin Mondays continues on Tuesday with the Tuesday tea. Check it out and join me and take a sip.
You know, Martin used to say a lot of things. Some were funny, some were wise, but one thing he often said was, wow. Wow. Just those 3 letters. It spoke volumes. It meant a lot. When he didn't know what to say, wow. When he was excited about something, wow. When he was confused, perhaps, or even frustrated, he said, wow. And you know, he's still saying wow. Through this bracelet, he's still saying wow because he's still saying, may your whole life prove that God is good. And so in closing, that's my hope for you this week. May you have wow moments as you too are living out legacy. Live in the wow. Live in the reality of knowing that your whole life is good. Live in the heartbeat of Martin Mondays and intentional intimacy. May that anchor you in this week as you build legacy. One wow, one moment at a time. See you next week.